Hello viewers, this video is on Kerbal Space Program, and it sort of follows the previous one that I did, which is about how to get started in a game. I realized as it was updating that I really didn't explain very much of the interface while I made that video, and I probably should have covered that before going into some of these other details. I may have spent a lot of time playing this game, but I guess I'm not a very good teacher. So what we have in the interface here, this shows the actual time elapsed in the game since you started your campaign. You have your time acceleration, which is controlled by the comma and period keys on your keyboard. You can warp to sunrise if it happens to be dark and you want to be able to see what you're doing. This gives you the current amount of cash you have in your current save. This is your current reputation in your current save. And this is the current number of science points that you have in your current save. These are what's available to spend in a research facility. This will take you back to the previous menu, which in the case of this screen is basically just the pause screen, which gives you the option of going back to the main menu. These are quick shortcuts to the various buildings. You can also access the buildings simply by highlighting these sections of the ground around the spaceport, and then left clicking will take you to them. Right clicking will give you the upgrade screen that gives you a price for upgrade. If you hover your mouse pointer over top of the upgrade button, it'll tell you what changes when you do the upgrade. And then left clicking anywhere will close these windows. Down in the bottom corner of the screen, some of these are mods, which I've got installed. I probably should have done this completely clean for the sake of less confusion. But essentially, these ones here are mods that I've got installed, visual mods, things like that. These are actual features that are built into the game itself. This is, for instance, contracts that you have available. The alarm clock, no, I'm wrong, this is actually a mod as well. And messages, which are part of the stock game. And then of course we'll go into the assembly building and I'll explain the interface in that a little bit. So on the left side of the screen we've got the build toolbox essentially. It's separated into different sections sorted by command pods, fuel tanks, cap, engines. Command and control is basically stuff like probes. Basically, they're more advanced things you'll unlock to give you more control of your ship. Structural would be stuff like towers to support the rocket when you're launching it. It would be girders that you can use for building larger rockets, stuff like that. Robotics is for one of the DLC packs, which is unlocked through the research menu. Coupling is both axial mount, which are stack mount, like this for instance, or they're radial decouplers, which allow you to have multiple stacks, solid rocket boosters maybe along the side of your rocket, and then blow those off to the side. Normally, if you're using radial mount, you would also want to use symmetry and have multiple different items attached. Then we've got payload. This is stuff like service bays. These allow you to put things inside of them to keep them out of the airflow. When you add them, it will be you generally have a button to open the doors. You can put in batteries, stuff like mystery goo containers, things like that. And this allows you to run, for instance, something like the mystery goo container on the inside of the craft, where it's not getting wind drag and it's not exposed to heat on re-entry or things like that. Then you've got things like aerodynamics, which are fins. They can also be stuff like wings when you get up into space planes. You've got ground stuff, which is landing gear. This is another one that you would want to use with the symmetry, and I'll cover that soon enough. Thermal is things like heat shields and radiators. Electrical is stuff like batteries, solar panels, generators. Communication is antennas. Science is instruments that will give you basically science points, just like it sounds like. Cargo is things that you can actually carry in your craft or in rovers and stuff like that. It's things like jetpacks for EVA, parachutes for EVA, but it can also be spare parts. Certain Kerbals can repair your ships. Engineers, for instance, if you break a solar panel off, they can go outside of the craft, and if you have a spare solar panel in your maybe in your service bay or whatever, they can mount that and make it usable again. And then utility is stuff like parachutes and things along those lines. These two are both for mod pack that I've got. I won't get into those. Here you've got the symmetry menu. You can set it for up to 6-way symmetry. Sorry, 8-way symmetry. So let's say that you wanted to go with 3-way symmetry. That basically puts 3 legs on there. You want to go up to 4 legs, you go up to 4, and so on. And then this is the snap button, which allows you to free place or to have them snap to one of the cardinal angles. And I think it snaps in like 10 or 20 degree increments. You can also use, when you do rotation of these things, or when you're mounting these, you can rotate them using the WASD and Q and E keys. It wouldn't make much sense with landing gear, but it's possible to do. And you can hold down the shift key while you're using those, and you can step in smaller rotations. There's also the center of mass overlay. This tells you if the ship was in a vacuum and it started to tumble, this is the point that it would tumble around. The center of lift is where it's pushing from. Sorry, center of thrust rather. That's where it's pushing from. So for instance, if this was mounted off to the side of the craft and it wasn't in line with the center of mass, then it would cause the craft to tumble as soon as you fired the engines on it. And then center of lift is normally used for things like airplanes. That shows you, like if you had wings on this thing or a set of fins on it or something along those lines, where those would provide lift to. So for instance, we're just supposing horizontal flight in this instance. If it's flying horizontally, the center of lift is up at the junction between the capsule and the decoupler. If you put these fins down at the bottom, they provide lift when it's flying horizontally, but so does the shape of the capsule to a degree. So you can see that by positioning this, you'll change your overall configuration of the craft. This is more of an advanced feature that you would use once you start trying to design planes and things like that. Then on the side here, you've got your stack menu. This is done, like you can add items to the stack to separate them. So for instance, if I wanted to fire the engine first, then I wanted to have manual control of the decoupler, then I wanted to have manual control of this parachute, I put them all into different stacks. If I want to fire the engine and the decoupler at the same time, I put them into the same stack. That probably wouldn't be particularly good. Or I could put the decoupler and the parachute into the same stack. Once again, that's not really optimal for this design. Here you have stuff like I guess the Wikipedia for the page, the program. This will give you information about how things work in a game. You want to find out how engines work. This is a good source of information for it. Your delta V allows you to turn on or off stuff like your thrust to weight, your burn times, things like that. And to actually display those, you click just to the side, like outside of this green box, will pull out that particular tab and show you more information about it. In this particular instance, this engine has 700 meters a second of delta V, which means that sitting still in a vacuum, it can move the ship from 0 velocity to 700 meters a second. Of course, nothing is going to be in space at 0 velocity. Everything will have some speed, but that's essentially just a change of speed. And Delta V is also, it corresponds to how much fuel is left, but there's a number of things that go into it, like fuel, weight, things like that. And then these are all just engine parameters. You can also get parameters on various other items in the game. But primarily, the only one that's important about would be the engines, because they're the only ones that actually have stuff like thrust to weight, delta V readings, stuff like that. And you can also set whether you want this to be displayed for at sea level, while you're at altitude, or while you're in vacuum, and then for different planets, because of course different planets have different gravities, so your thrust to weight is going to be different on them than it's going to be on Kerbal. Up here you've got your interface to export things to Steam, to make a new craft, to open, save, or go to the launch pad, or be back to the previous screen, which is the main look at the Space Center. And in here you can type a name for your craft, and you can also type a description. These are more advanced editing tools and tools to set your crew specific to this craft. It'll generally default to the person that's most qualified. However, if you decide, okay, Jeb's got enough experience on this, we're going to put a different pilot in, then you can take Jeb out and you can put Valentina in. So you can change the crew like that. Most of these I would recommend maybe don't play around with too much, because it's something you're really going to want to learn how to operate a little bit more. And then the switch editor allows you to change the mode in which the editor works. And this basically takes you between spaceplane mode and rocket mode. I would say if you're in the assembly building, work on rocket mode. If you're in the spaceplane hangar, work on plane mode. And don't start trying to change back and forth between them when you don't know what you're doing. And then, of course, actually, we're going to cancel that. We're going to put this onto the launch pad, and we're going to show you the flight interface. And that's something that I should have covered in more detail on the last video as well. And the flight interface works the same whether you're in a plane or whether you're on a rocket. There's a couple of things that will look a little bit different, but all of the interface elements are the same. Okay, so once again, you've got your elapsed time, you've got your warp menu, you've got your signal strength, which is whether or not you can radio back to Kerbal, or whether you can transmit data. In this case, there's no antenna on the craft. This shows your altitude. You can set it to be whether you want it to be above sea level or whether you want it to be above ground level. This is your vertical speed indicator. This is your, you can return to the Space Center, you can recover the vessel, you can turn on your lights, you can activate your landing gear, and then this is your brakes that you would normally use with space planes or possibly rovers or stuff like that. You have the stack menu is now over on the left-hand side, whereas in the assembly building is on the right-hand side. You can still add or remove things to the stack menu or change things around. However, these are not saved as part of your vehicle. That only saves when you do it inside of the assembly buildings. Here you've got the current stage that you're on. These buttons here are for different modes in the game. I would recommend that you should probably go to just in your staging mode. You can access your map, which is the M key. This is your nav ball, and this is probably most of the information that you use in the game. It tells you the direction your craft is facing. So for instance, this represents the nose of your craft. Right now it's facing directly straight up, and it also gives you your compass headings on it. So to the east is 90 degrees, to the forward of you is north, that would be at 0 degrees. And the reason that this is actually showing us backwards from that is because we're looking north right now. So if I push the W key to lean the craft away from me so that I'm flying in that direction, the nav ball will tilt down and it'll display it more as a compass. You have your SAS, which is stability assist. You've got your RCS, which is not typically used unless you've got reaction thrusters, which are part of the advanced control system. And then you've got your throttle here, which is done by the shift and control key. And here you've got your various information buttons on here, messages, the resources in the craft. This is to do with I want to say an alarm, but maybe they've actually added this to the. I thought this was a mod, but they might have actually added this to the game itself. And then, of course, these are contracts you've got available. Your cash, science, and reputation. Your Delta V window, things like that. Cargo, and the Wikipedia. So we'll press the spacebar. We'll launch. You'll be able to see that if I go north, it'll actually tilt the nav ball to show you that I'm running north. This is your G-force meter shown on this side. Up in the red is dangerous to Kerbals. Down in the green section is safe for Kerbals. I'm still able to move the craft around because I have resources in the craft. But you can see that as I move those, it uses electricity because that's essentially working with the reaction wheel, which acts like a gyroscope that you can use for moving your craft around. So you can see that we're heading directly north right now. This little marker, which shows my prograde, that's the direction that the craft is going in, is shown on the, like right now I'm heading below the horizon, so I'm starting to dive. You can see that my descent meter is starting to go down. I can hit the space bar, or I can activate this to decouple. Now I've cut the capsule loose. I can turn off the SAS at this point, and the heaviest portion of the capsule will, or of the craft, will then want to be in the leading edge, so it'll sort of self-correct itself. And then the final stage would be to deploy the parachute before we reach the ground. On these various windows, you can drag them around, and you can also pin them if you don't want the window to close. Or by right-clicking, the window will close because you've deactivated it. When the parachute's deployed, it won't fully inflate until you get down below 1,000 meters. And in that instance, I didn't do it soon enough, so the craft was destroyed and it hit the ground. I can then recover the craft, or I can revert to either my launch, the assembly building, or I can say, okay, well, I'm just going to take me back to the space center. That astronaut is now dead. Or those of you that are a little more prone to rage quitting might choose the quit to menu or close or whatever. Most of the time, though, you would simply want to revert to launch or revert to the assembly building and maybe take another crack at it and try to fly a better flight. Anyways, that's the basics of the interface on Kerbal Space Program. I should have had that at the beginning of the last video, but I'm not exactly what you'd call a professional YouTuber, so it is what it is. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to watch this. Hopefully it'll make some things a little bit more clear in the game.